Raise your hands! Raise your hands, I said! Raise your hands! The shrill scream echoed through the supermarket aisles. The fluorescent lights from the ceiling shone, reflecting off the cold metallic barrel of the gun pointed directly at his chest. Miguel Reyes stood there in the middle of the cereal and yogurt aisle, his hands slowly raised to shoulder height as ordered, with a mix of shock and anger. "I haven't done anything wrong," Miguel said in a calm voice, trying to maintain his composure despite the pounding in his chest and the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding." The young police officer with the badge bearing the name Jenkins on his chest had a red, tense, and aggressive face. "I won't lower my weapon. Misunderstanding? Do you think I'm crazy? You look suspicious. Your actions are suspicious. I've seen your kind before. Don't try to fool me," he growled, his voice full of contempt and prejudice. "You look as furtive as a thief." Thief. Miguel Reyes, an FBI agent, being called a thief and held at gunpoint in the middle of a supermarket on a Saturday afternoon by a young local police officer who was clearly acting out of prejudice. This humiliation, this blatant abuse of power, left Miguel so stunned that he could barely react. What had happened in the few minutes leading up to this incredible scene? To understand, we need to take a step back in the life of the man standing there in front of the gun's barrel. The man standing in the supermarket aisle facing the fire of a local police officer was the federal agent Miguel Reyes. At 45 years old, he was a veteran FBI agent, a veteran in the war against crime. He had served in the Federal Bureau of Investigation for almost 20 years, rising through the ranks and specializing in complex areas such as organized crime and counterterrorism. Miguel was not your average Latino in the stereotypical sense that people like Officer Jenkins believed. He was a seasoned, respected man in the federal law enforcement community, a symbol of professionalism, integrity, and dedication. Miguel's upbringing was not easy. He came from a working-class neighborhood on the outskirts of San Benito, Texas, the city where this story takes place. San Benito is a small, racially diverse town, but like many places in America, there are still hidden prejudices and sometimes flagrantes. Miguel worked incredibly hard to overcome his circumstances, excel in school, and eventually achieve his dream of joining the FBI. It was a great joy for him to return to the FBI office near his hometown after years of absence. Throughout his career at the FBI, Miguel has faced the most dangerous criminals, worked under extreme pressure, and always acted with professionalism, poise, and respect for the law. He has seen the worst in people, but has always believed in justice and the system he served. He is a man who values facts, evidence, and the principle of treating everyone fairly. Being treated as a dangerous criminal based on his ethnic background is a profound insult that undermines everything he has done. What makes Miguel Reyes' story special is his relationship with the chief of the San Benito Police Department, Roberto "Bobby" Perez. Miguel and Bobby grew up together in San Benito. They attended the same schools and played basketball together. Bobby had been Miguel's best friend since childhood. After graduating from high school, Miguel went to college and eventually joined the FBI, while Bobby stayed in San Benito, joined the local police department, and rose through the ranks, eventually becoming chief. Although their career paths diverged and they lived in different cities for many years, Miguel and Bobby kept in touch, seeing each other occasionally and maintaining a deep friendship based on mutual respect and trust. Bobby Perez was an experienced and fair police chief and respected Miguel, knowing the kind of person Miguel was and what he had achieved. It was a typical Saturday afternoon in San Benito. Miguel had just finished some personal errands and stopped by the local supermarket, San Benito Fresh Mart, to pick up a few things at his wife's request. The supermarket was quite crowded at this hour. Miguel, of medium build and with gray hair, was dressed casually in jeans, a shirt, and a light jacket. He looked like any other middle-aged man doing his weekend shopping. He slowly pushed his shopping cart down the aisles, looking for the items he needed. The police officer patrolling the supermarket area was Officer Carlos Ramirez. Ramirez was a young officer, probably under 25 years old, who had joined the San Benito Police Department. About a year ago, he was aggressive, inexperienced, and full of overconfidence and arrogance. Ramirez came from another part of the state and brought with him deeply ingrained racial prejudices. He tended to view Latinos, especially those outside his familiar environment, with inherent suspicion. He liked to show his authority, especially over people he thought wouldn't resist. He was patrolling the supermarket on foot mainly to be seen and to make time pass more quickly. As Ramirez passed aisle 7, where Miguel had stopped to look at the shelves, his eyes fell on Miguel. Miguel was a middle-aged Latino man dressed casually. Nothing was really suspicious from the average person's perspective, but in the prejudiced mind of Officer Ramirez, Miguel's appearance, perhaps his skin tone, or the slow way he moved, or anything else his prejudices had conjured, was enough to qualify as suspicious. He thought, "What is this man doing? He doesn't seem to live in the neighborhood. Is he looking for things to steal?" He had no prior notice of theft or any description. He was acting on his own prejudices and feelings. Ramirez decided to approach Miguel. He walked directly towards him, his behavior immediately aggressive and accusatory, without the slightest courtesy or respect. "Hey, you stop," ordered Ramirez, his voice loud and harsh. Miguel, who was examining the cereal box, turned slightly startled. He saw a young police officer approaching him with a severe expression. He stopped his cart, trying to understand what was happening. "Yes, officer, what's the matter?" asked Miguel, his voice calm and polite. "What are you doing here?" asked Ramirez, his voice accusatory, as if being in a supermarket were a crime. He stood a short distance from Miguel, his eyes searching, evaluating him from head to toe. "I'm shopping," replied Miguel, a little bewildered by his attitude. "You look suspicious," said Ramirez bluntly, his voice dripping with disdain. "I've been watching since you entered. What are you doing lurking around here?" "I was just looking for cereal," said Miguel, trying to stay calm. "I live in San Benito. I'm a citizen here." "Don't lie to me," growled Ramirez. He didn't believe Miguel. In his mind, his preconceptions were already playing out a different scenario. "You don't look like someone from around here. Where are you from?" "I told you. I live in San Benito," replied Miguel, his voice becoming a bit harsher. His patience was starting to wear thin. "This is discrimination. I demand your identification," ordered Ramirez abruptly, his voice loud and tense. He placed his hand on the butt of his gun. "Why?" asked Miguel. He knew his rights. A police officer couldn't randomly ask to check identification without a valid reason. "I haven't done anything wrong. You have no valid reason to ask for my papers and bother me while I'm shopping." Miguel's calm and determined behavior and his clear understanding of authority were completely or deliberately misinterpreted by Ramirez. He saw it as a challenge to his authority, a rebellion, and the confirmation that Miguel had something to hide. Ramirez's face turned red with anger, and his arrogance was touched. "Are you resisting an officer?" Ramirez shouted, his voice sharp. "I have the right to search anyone I find suspicious. And you look suspicious. You seem like you're about to flee or hide something." He moved closer, the distance between them closing threateningly. "I'm not resisting," Miguel said, his voice low, trying to maintain composure despite the adrenaline pumping through him. As an FBI agent, he was trained to handle stressful and dangerous situations, but being treated like this by a local police officer was a different kind of stress, a combination of potential physical danger and a deep insult to his dignity. He looked into Ramirez's eyes, trying to read his thoughts. He saw fear, inexperience, arrogance, and most importantly, prejudice in his eyes. "Put your hands up! Put your hands up, I said! Put your hands up!" Ramirez shouted, his voice hoarse, with tension and wounded pride. He had drawn a gun from his holster, aiming it directly at Miguel's chest. Miguel stood there in the middle of the supermarket aisle, facing Officer Carlos Ramirez's weapon, listening to the insults and absurd, prejudiced accusations. His hands were raised to shoulder height, a sign of compliance. He felt the eyes of several nearby customers on him. The humiliation was indescribable, but beyond the fear and humiliation, there was a cold anger. Who did he think he was? What right did he have to treat him like this just because of his ethnic background? In that moment of extreme tension, Miguel, with his experience as an FBI agent, assessed quickly the situation resistance. Number one of obviously useless explanation against a prejudiced officer like this, FBI identification could panic and shoot. His best option was to use another source, one that he didn't expect, one that could end this immediately and hold him accountable. Bobby needed to call Bobby. With a calm perfected over years of real danger, Miguel kept his hands raised, his voice calm but determined. "Officer," he said, each word sounding clearly, "I'm telling you, you're making a big mistake. You're pointing a gun at someone you don't know. I want to speak to your superiors. I want to speak to the chief." Ramirez sneered, his smile full of mockery. "The chief? Who do you think you are, talking to the chief? Do you think this scares me?" Your best friend was incredulous. "That's right," Miguel said, his eyes piercing through Ramirez. "I'll call your chief, Chief Roberto Perez. He's a good friend of mine, and he won't be happy about what you've done to me." Ramirez's face, still red with anger and tension, changed instantly. "Roberto?" Perez, Chief Bobby Perez, a close friend, looked at Miguel with his calm face and determined eyes. A doubt, a flicker of fear began to creep into his mind. He knew how Chief Bobby Perez was, a fair man who valued friendship. "You're lying," stammered Ramirez, but his voice had lost its previous confidence, replaced by panic. "Do you think you'll get away with lying like that?" "I'm not lying," said Miguel. Slowly, very slowly, he lowered his right hand, keeping it in Ramirez's line of sight. Carefully, he took his cell phone out of his pocket. "I'm going to call him right now. Do you want to talk to him?" Ramirez stood frozen in place, gun still in hand, pointing at Miguel, but his confidence had completely evaporated. He watched Miguel unlock his phone, searching for contacts. The panic in his eyes was growing. He still didn't completely believe it, but the possibility that this was real terrified him. Miguel found Bobby's number in his contacts and dialed it. The phone rang. The atmosphere in the supermarket aisle became tense. Ramirez stood frozen, his eyes fixed on Miguel, on the phone in his hand. "Hello, Miguel? What's up?" Chief Perez's voice came through the phone's speaker. "Hi, Bob," said Miguel, his voice calm but tense. "I'm at the San Benito Fresmart in aisle 7 next to the cereals. I'm having a little problem with one of your officers." "Problem?" Chief Perez's voice immediately turned serious. "Officer Carlos Ramirez," said Miguel, looking at Ramirez, who was there, pale. "He stopped me, said I looked suspicious, insulted me, and now he has a gun pointed at me just because I'm a Latino man shopping. I told him I wanted to talk to you, but he didn't believe me." On the other end of the line, Chief Perez was silent for a few seconds. Then his voice sounded deep and filled with a cold anger that Miguel had rarely heard from his friend. "He pointed a gun at you just for that, Miguel. Stay right there. Don't do anything. I'll be there in a minute." Miguel ended the call. He put the phone back in his pocket, maintaining his composure, and looked at Officer Carlos Ramirez, who was standing there, his face as white as death, sweat beading on his forehead. He had just heard Miguel's entire conversation on speakerphone, or at least enough to realize that it was the chief, and Miguel was talking about him and the gun he had pointed. He had pointed a gun at the chief's best friend, a Latino man he had insulted and despised, who happened to have a personal relationship with the chief of the department. "Do you really know the chief?" stammered Ramirez, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "I told you," replied Miguel, his voice cold. and I think you have a lot to explain." Ramirez's face was filled with total panic. He realized the enormity of his mistake. His hands trembled as slowly lowered the weapon. Then he stammered an apology. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't know his apology was not one of remorse, but of fear of losing his job and being punished." Approximately 5 minutes later, a police car without siren or flashing lights stopped in front of the supermarket. Chief Roberto Perez entered. He was in civilian clothes but had the air of a leader. He scanned the lobby looking for Miguel. When he saw the scene in aisle 7, Miguel Reyes, his best friend, standing there with a tense expression, and Officer Carlos Ramirez standing in front of him pale, his gun still gripped in his hand. Chief Perez's face hardened with anger. Chief Perez walked. Directly towards them, he approached Miguel, completely ignoring Ramirez for a moment. "Miguel, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Chief Perez's voice was full of concern for his friend. "I'm fine, Bobby," said Miguel. "Just surprised he has done nothing but point a gun at me and insult me." Chief Perez turned to look at Carlos Ramirez. His eyes were cold, filled with anger and complete frustration. "Officer Ramirez, what are you doing here with a gun in your hand? What are you doing with Federal Agent Miguel Reyes?" Chief Perez's voice echoed through the hallway. Ramirez froze for a second, if possible even more than the first time. Not just the chief's best friend, a FI agent. All his preconceptions and prejudices crumbled. He realized who he was dealing with. "Agent, Federal Agent," Ramirez stammered, completely panicked. He looked at Chief Perez, then at Miguel, then alarm trembled in his hand. "Chief, I don't know. I swear, I don't know." "You don't know," Chief Perez interrupted, his voice dripping with contempt. "You don't know? Or you don't care to know? You're acting on your own prejudices. You pointed a gun at an innocent citizen, a friend of mine, a federal agent in the middle of a supermarket because you thought he was suspicious." Chief Perez approached Ramirez, his eyes relentless. "Hand over your weapon now, slowly, and then return your badge and radio to the station immediately. Straight to my office. You are suspended immediately." Carlos Ramirez trembled as he followed the order. Slowly, he lowered his weapon and holstered it. His hands trembled so much that he almost dropped it. He removed his badge and radio and handed them to Chief Perez. His face was sweaty and tears began to roll down his face. "Chief, I'm sorry. Officer Reyes, I was wrong. Please forgive me." He kept apologizing, his voice pathetic and full of fear. Miguel Reyes looked at him wordlessly. He didn't need this apology. This apology wasn't because he realized that his discriminatory actions were wrong, but because he was afraid of losing his job. Miguel's expression was cold and full of disappointment. Chief Perez signaled to several other officers who had arrived and then took Ramirez outside. Ramirez walked like a madman, murmuring apologies as he was led away. After Ramirez left, Chief Perez returned to Miguel, sighed, looking tired and disappointed. "Miguel, I'm very sorry that you had to go through this. I can't believe any officer under my command would act this way, especially not you." "It's okay, Bobby," said Miguel, although he still felt the sting of annoyance and humiliation. "I'm fine. But Bobby, you need to review your hiring process and training. If he dared to do that to me, someone he didn't know, what do you think he would do to others who don't have my resources?" Chief Perez nodded solemnly. "I understand. I will see this through to the end. I will never tolerate such behavior in my department." Immediately upon returning to the department, Chief Perez requested that the Internal Affairs Division open a formal and urgent investigation into Officer Carlos Ramirez's conduct. The head of the IA Division, a reliable and impartial individual, was assigned to the task. The investigation was conducted thoroughly and quickly under Chief Perez's close supervision. They interviewed Special Agent Miguel Reyes. Miguel, with the professionalism of a veteran investigative agent, provided a detailed, coherent, and unemotional account, emphasizing the sequence of events, Ramirez's words, including his discriminatory comments, his behavior, and the fact that he pointed a gun at him without any justification. They interviewed Officer Carlos Ramirez. Ramirez, in a state of fear and desperation, tried to defend himself. He said that Mr. Reyes seemed suspicious, that he felt threatened when Mr. Reyes reached into his pocket for his phone, although Miguel only took the phone after he had pointed a gun at him and challenged him to call the chief. He tried to minimize his insults, claiming they were out of nowhere. He repeatedly apologized, but it was clear that his main motive was to save his career. The most important piece of evidence in the investigation was the video from the San Benito Fresh Mart security camera system. The store, like most modern commercial establishments, had extensive surveillance cameras. The video captured the entire incident from multiple angles: Ramirez's approach to Miguel, his initial behavior, the conversation, although there was no clear audio, the body language was clear, Ramirez's aggressive behavior and pointing a gun at Miguel while Miguel remained still, Miguel's calm behavior, his actions of taking his phone and making a call, and Ramirez's panicked reaction while Miguel spoke with Chief Perez. The video provided irrefutable evidence of Ramirez's abuse of power, his abusive behavior, and his unreasonable use of lethal force. Detective Lasea also interviewed several supermarket employees and nearby customers who witnessed part of the incident. Their statements, although not as complete as Miguel's and the video, confirmed that the police officer initiated the incident and was aggressive. The IA Internal Affairs investigation report was completed expeditiously due to the serious nature and clear evidence. It concluded that Officer Carlos Ramirez had seriously violated multiple policies and regulations of the San Benito Police Department, including unprofessional and offensive behavior towards the public's, especially racist behavior and language. He was also cited for abuse of power for stopping people and asking for identification without reasonable grounds, without reasonable suspicion or specific reason, and unreasonable and unnecessary use of lethal force against an unarmed and non-threatening citizen. There were clear signs of discrimination and racial prejudice while on duty based on the victim's testimony and the context of the incident. The report also cited dishonesty during the investigation, trying to justify his own wrongdoing. The report recommends the highest form of discipline, termination. The case was referred to the police department's disciplinary review board. The board consisted of Chief Perez as board chair, the IA chief, and other senior officers. At the hearing, the IA chief presented the details of the investigative report and the evidence, including the security camera video, which was thoroughly reviewed by the board special agent Miguel Reyes. As a victim and federal officer, chose not to appear in person at the internal affairs hearing but did submit a statement. In the statement, he not only described the incident and how he felt insulted and humiliated by being treated like a criminal based on his ethnic origin in the place where he grew up, but he also emphasized the dangers of police officers acting on prejudices and abusing their power. He argued that such behavior destroys the community's trust in law enforcement and cannot be tolerated, emphasizing that an officer with the attitude and behavior of Officer Ramirez does not deserve to wear the badge and be entrusted with the responsibility of protecting the public. Despite being a close friend of Chief Perez, Miguel remained professional and objective, focusing on Ramirez's misconduct. Officer Carlos Ramirez attended the hearing with his lawyer. He listened to the investigation report and watched the video and could not deny what had happened. He repeatedly apologized, trying to show remorse, but his words were still intertwined with fear of the consequences. His lawyer tried to obtain a lighter sentence, saying that Ramirez was young and inexperienced, and that this was a bad mistake in a situation where he felt stressed, even though he had caused that stress. The disciplinary review board listened carefully. They reviewed the evidence again. They considered the seriousness of the violations, unreasonable use of lethal force, abuse of authority, offensive and discriminatory conduct, and dishonesty. The fact that Ramirez's actions were clearly recorded on video and that the victim was a federal agent and a close friend of the chief added to the seriousness and the need for decisive punishment to maintain discipline and trust in the department. Chief Perez, as the chair of the board, was severe and uncompromising. He made it clear that behavior like Ramirez's was completely unacceptable and had no place in the San Benito Police Department. The board made the final determination. Officer Carlos Ramirez's conduct was a serious violation of the department's code of ethics and policies. His unreasonable use of lethal force, flagrant abuse of authority, and racial prejudice demonstrated his inability to serve as a police officer. The board's resolution announced, Officer Carlos Ramirez is dismissed from the San Benito Police Department with immediate effect. Carlos Ramirez sat there pale and devastated. He had lost everything: his job, his career, his reputation. Fear and desperation were written in his eyes. He had nothing more to say. His late and false apologies were meaningless. Chief Perez spoke privately with Miguel after the decision was made. He expressed his relief that justice had been served and his commitment to cleaning up the department and ensuring that officers like Ramirez have no place. Miguel thanked Bobby for handling the case so quickly and with integrity. The San Benito Police Department issued a brief press release announcing the dismissal of Officer Carlos Ramirez following an internal investigation into serious misconduct. The statement did not detail the incident involving the FBI to protect privacy, but emphasized the department's commitment to maintaining the highest standards of ethics and professionalism. Although it was not widely reported in the national news, within law enforcement circles, the story of the young San Benito officer who pointed a Latino FBI agent due to prejudice and was immediately fired has become a severe warning. For Carlos Ramirez, the firing is the initial punishment. He loses his job, his pension, and his ability to find work in any other law enforcement agency. He also faces a possible civil lawsuit from Miguel Reyes, although Miguel, as a federal officer, could choose not to pursue it to avoid complications. However, he has the right to do so. His future is now a big question mark filled with uncertainty. For Special Agent Miguel Reyes, the experience was a painful reminder of the persistence of prejudice and the dangers of abuse of power, even in the small town he called home. Being treated like a criminal simply because of his ethnic background and having a gun pointed at him without reason was deeply traumatic. However, the fact that he remained calm, used his resources effectively by calling Chief Perez, and saw the perpetrator held accountable immediately gave him a sense of satisfaction and justice. He defended not only himself, but also anyone else who might have been a victim of similar acts, but had no means to defend themselves. His long-standing friendship with Chief Perez, a man of integrity, was crucial in ensuring that justice was served quickly and decisively. The story of Special Agent Miguel Reyes is a powerful reminder of that racial bias and abuse of power are not problems of the past. They persist even in the most seemingly mundane interactions. This story exposes the dangers of letting bias cloud judgment and the professionalism and accountability required of those tasked with protecting the public. Miguel Reyes turned a moment of danger and humiliation into a victory for justice by ensuring that the abuser of power will face immediate and appropriate consequences. What does the story of Special Agent Miguel Reyes tell you about the importance of combating bias in law enforcement and ensuring full accountability for misconduct? Do you think the immediate firing of Officer Ramirez was a fair and appropriate decision? What do you think should be done to prevent biased and abusive officers like Carlos Ramirez from entering and operating in the police force? Share your thoughts and feelings in the comments.